Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining me here in our Abbotts studio in Northcliffe in Johannesburg. My name is Dr. Jacques Mostert, and tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about what to do when things didn't go exactly as planned in the matric results of 2020. So what do I mean by things haven't got there yet? What we see is that by the beginning of your grade 12 year, you start getting ready, looking at your APA scores, looking at universities that you've been wanting to apply for, and really taking your future seriously. Now, this means that inevitably you are going to be looking at options. Do you want to study after you finish school, or do you want to maybe go into an apprenticeship? And if you do want to go into either one of those options, exactly which ones would you choose? Would you want to go to a university, a state university, or a private university? Or would you want to join a college so that you can continue your education in the way that you choose? And the important part here is in the way that you choose. But sometimes things happen, and as different things in life will always happen, disaster struck last year, and we ended up with a pandemic that meant that everything was disrupted. Now, change at the best of time isn't the nicest experience, but disruption is actually quite traumatizing. So when you haven't quite got there yet, what does it really mean? Well, not being there yet sometimes means that you might have failed one or two subjects, or you might even have failed more subjects, and which means that actually you did not quite achieve your grade 12 result as you wanted to. Not there yet sometimes means the girl who needs that extra A so that she can go and study engineering, or sometimes it means the boy that needed to move the C up to a B so that he can go and study teaching, for example, at university. So not there yet has a different meaning for a variety of people. Now, when this happens, we need to think about emotions and behaviors. So you will all remember that just before the matric results came out, and this is true for both you as parents and you as the young people that had to sit and wait all the way through January for this, and there was a lot of anticipation, and I'm quite sure a lot of fear and hope, because maybe it went better than you thought it would go. And then, of course, trepidation, because what if it didn't go quite as well as you thought it would go? And what this does is it actually causes something that we call cognitive dissonance. And this cognitive dissonance is a clash between what we believe would happen and what the reality is of what happened. Now, you as the young people, you're not the only ones that found it quite difficult, because if you take a look at the aftermath of these results, you and your family might have experienced disappointment. It might have been very embarrassing, because you were quite sure that you were going to get that B or that C grade, and it didn't quite turn out that way. And when this happens, we kind of develop the sense of helplessness, the sense of, but I've done everything that I could possibly do. I went online, I studied, I followed all the guidelines that my teachers gave me, and yet it did not happen the way that I expected it. That reality and that hope that clashes with one another sometimes causes a sense of anger. And rightfully so. You might be angry at yourself, or you might blame the world and blame COVID, and even blame your teachers, because they could have, should have, would have worked harder. You could have, would have, should have worked harder. So that sense of anger is very normal to feel. And the problem with anger is that it very quickly sets into a sense of resentment. And resentment is a very dangerous experience, a very dangerous emotion to feel. Because what we know is that emotions and behaviors are inextricably linked. And that then sometimes means that you go into a sense of inaction. You just don't want to do anything anymore, because why do anything? Because it's not going to work out in any case. Now, your parents and those parents watching, you also experienced a lot of emotions, disappointment. Inevitably, you are proud of your child and the effort that they have been putting into the 4 years, and then suddenly this 1 year comes along that messes everything up. So that is quite disappointing. You may feel a sense of anger. Maybe anger at yourself because you should have maybe spent more time with them, or you feel angry because you wanted to give them that independence that they need so that they can show progress, and you feel that you have let them down, so you feel angry at them maybe because you think, well, they should have known better, they should have worked harder. And that is a very, very normal experience to have. And this, of course, is then followed by the fear of their future. What will they do with their future? Where are they going to place themselves? And let's face it, in a very difficult time internationally, with economic markets that jump up and down, and with the numbers of people that can't find work, whether they have a university degree or not, you want your child to be in the best possible position to get to the best possible tertiary institution so that they can build that future. And now that things have not gone quite as well as we wanted it to go, we see that there's a very strong sense of fear. What am I going to do with my child? And then, of course, the most important one, and that is complete confusion about the options. What must we now do? And when I talk to parents, I quite often find that they come and they say, but we don't know who to ask. We don't know how to find it on the internet. We don't know what the options are. Nobody ever told us that if things don't go right, these are some of the options that you can follow. So, what is my advice to you first, both as parents and as young people? The first thing is, the best way to react is to not overreact, because we know when we overreact, lots of emotions comes into play, and we tend to make decisions that are not necessarily the best decisions because they were taken in the heat of the moment. They might have been taken while in an argument or while in a sense of desperation, and that is what we don't want. The second thing that we really don't want to do is to try and find blame. When we try and find the blame by saying it was either the way of teaching, or it was the Department of Education, or it was the whole lockdown and the pandemic, what we are doing is we are spending so much emotional energy on looking at the past that we are not looking at what needs to be done to have a better future. And there was quite a wise man, Seneca, that once said, leave the past in the past, because that's where it should be. And I implore you to do exactly that. It is done now. There's nothing you can do to fix that. What you can do, though, is to adopt a mindset of future-mindedness, of growth, of possibility. You must remember that there is no situation that is ever so bad that it cannot be fixed. There are so many options that you can consider and talk through and find out more information about. And I guess that's what specifically tonight is about, so that I can start helping you to decide what some of those options are. I think it is very important that all of us, you, me, the young people and the parents, and even some teachers that are out there and listening to this now, understand that education is a journey. Lifelong learning is a reality. And even though matric is such a rite of passage in our lives, I mean, it goes along with such great events as your matric farewell. It goes along with the anticipation of that matric holiday that you go on, and the nerves and anticipation and celebration of grades, that we forget that it is a journey. It is not something that happens in the same way, in the same time, or ends up in the same place for everybody. I'm pretty sure if the young people manage to try and look around and find their parents' reports, they will see that their parents also went through a journey. I know I went through a journey. It took me about 12 years to get to the point where I got my doctorate, and that was while I was working already. So it is the same for you and for me. But if we expect that when we get to that very last day of matric, that this is the end of our journey in learning, then we're actually making quite a big error, because it's not. It always continues. And then I want to say, both to parents and to young people and to families and teachers out there, don't judge. I have to be very honest with you. I don't know how I would have dealt with learning online, with disruption, with my day and my night being turned around, because we know that young people prefer to be awake at night and a day sleep through the day. I don't know how I would have dealt with technology not always working, or the type of lessons that I don't quite understand. I don't. And to be honest, I'm quite sure that parents agree with me, that they also found the whole process. Being in lockdown, spending so many hours together, and even though it sounds quite romantic to spend a lot of time with those that we love, our families and our children, I think a lot of frustration and a lot of anxiety also went into that entire experience of learning online. And then I want to say to the parents, and I'm talking to you as parents now specifically, you must listen, and then you must listen, and you must listen. Our young people have been through an unprecedented disruption. As a matter of fact, I think the last time we had such a massive disruption in education was in the vicinity of 40, 50 years ago in South Africa, and definitely since the Second World War. We must also understand that because our young people interact in a different way that we do, they probably found this a little bit more difficult than we would. We grew up with that sense of just do it and get over and done with it, whereas our young people grow up with there are problems to solve and there are people to help us solve those problems. With one problem. We were all in a sense of lockdown. And it seems like there's a national, if not international, sense of post-traumatic stress difficulties. I want to use the word difficulties specifically here because I don't want to make any form of diagnosis. But we all found it quite difficult. And then, at the beginning of this year, when everything was taken an extra month longer than it should have taken, that contributed to the anxiety. So I implore parents, listen and don't judge. So what should we do? I think it is time that we start looking at the idea and to embrace the power of yet. So you are not there yet. And what I like about the word and the concept and the construct behind the embracing of the power of yet is that we are talking about time. We are talking about processes. We're not talking about embarrassment or situations where we have to kind of explain something away because we just haven't managed to get to our specific high achieving goals yet. Then the second thing that I think is very, very important is to understand that yes, there is a sense of helplessness. I spoke to a parent today that said they're not calling me back at the university where I want to send my child. What must I do? And I said, well, get in your car and go there. Because we need to move out of that mindset of helplessness. If the institution, the university or the college doesn't call me back immediately, that doesn't mean that everything is past and over now. No, it just means that we need to decide to do things a little bit differently than we would have done it had things gone in the normal way that it's been going for the past how many ever decades. And then the most important lesson that we can all learn, not just from this pandemic, but I'm one of those people that can find something positive out of every bad situation. And in this case, I want to tell you that getting better never stops. Whether getting better academically, in our social life, in the way that we deal with our emotions, in our relationships with friends and our children, or at work, and specifically in the way that we learn, it just doesn't ever stop. So getting better never stops. That's something that should be on every young person's wall. Getting better never stops. So I'm pretty sure there are some of you sitting there now and saying, okay, you have now given us the psychology part of this and we understand the emotions and the anxiety, but what are the practical things that we have to do? And here is the way forward. Do things differently. So at Abbotts College, what we do is we enroll young people who wish to redo some or all of their grade 12 subjects. As a matter of fact, we enroll young people that said, I wanted to actually become a doctor. I couldn't quite get the grade in grade 11. I decided to take maths down to math lit, but now I've decided I am actually going to do this better and I am going to put in the extra work and now I want to take math. Or you might say, I took physics and actually I realized that I don't want to study a BSc. I don't want to become a pharmacist or a doctor or nurse practitioner. Actually, I'm more into entrepreneurship and business, and therefore, instead of then redoing physics, why don't you take tourism? Tourism is an outstanding subject and it is a lot of fun. It is a subject that really helps you get in, really helps you boost your APS scores. So when I say do things differently, I don't mean just come and redo, I mean actually do things differently. So when we say that we treat you like young adults at Abbotts, we actually really do treat you like young adults, and I'll get to that in a minute. You will be doing the entire year, and why this is very important is because you then get the opportunities to re-evaluate, redo and practice your school-based assessments. And what we saw from last year was the very important role that the school-based assessments played in pushing the grades up. And that is vitally important. And when you come to Abbotts, what happens is we help you bridge those gaps that you had because you didn't quite manage to cover the entire curriculum because of technology, etc. And when you do that, that also helps you to push up your APS so that you can then reach that target where you want it to be. What makes Abbotts really different is the way that support takes place. And when we talk about comprehensive support, we mean that at Abbotts, every young adult has a champion. Every young adult has a mentor that helps them look at what their goal is, help them set really high expectations for themselves, and help them then know what steps they have to take to achieve where they want to be, to achieve that score, to achieve that raised grade. And we do this in a rather non-traditional way. So for instance, we don't expect you to wear uniforms because we treat you like young adults. And we don't have bells that ring because we also work with time management and knowing and understanding how to work with your own time. And yes, I know this is the question and the problem that most young people is, but I really don't want to change my hairstyle after the matric holiday. And you know what? You don't have to. As long as you can see the teacher, that is fine. You don't have to change your hairstyle. So, again, what makes Abbotts different is that we are really focused on the progress of the young person. Now, don't get me wrong, we are very, very proud of all the distinctions that we got from our grade 12 students of last year, and that includes those who decided to do things differently and they redid some or all of their subjects, but it also included those grade 12s who joined us in grade 8 and came all the way through to grade 12. And it's a pretty significant number of distinctions across the Abbotts School. So we are very impressed with our young people, very proud of them. And we think that one of the, we know that one of the reasons that we could be so successful in raising the grades and the baccalaureate degree passes that we had is because there are no distractions. So you don't have to try and become the captain of the sports team, and you don't have to be part of the drama club and the music club and all of those extracurricular activities that are taking you away from focusing on that which is important at this point in time, and that is reaching the goal so that you can get where you want to get. Now, what is a very important aspect of Abbotts is that we handpick our teachers. And you can ask any current student, any current parent, is that we really go the distance to handpick our teachers and our students. I said students early on, but I meant the teachers. And they are really subject specialists. They are quite often quite young. They are quite often very well educated and have that extra know-how to build the type of relationship to make sure that you can reach the goal that you have. And then, of course, we have something that is a little bit different than anything else. And I hope the young people like this as much as the parents like it. But I know that this is one of the selling aspects that parents like most. And that is the guided homework sessions. Now, when we talk about homework sessions, it sounds a little bit old-fashioned. But it is actually much more nuanced than that. At the end of the day, there's an hour and 10 minutes during which each young person goes to their mentor's class. They sit down, they plan the hour, they plan what they need to do in terms of homework. If they don't have all of the homework that they think they should have got, they then have the opportunity to review the day's lesson, and that is very important because when you go into university, tertiary studies, or if you want to study at a diploma course, you will have to develop the skill to revise and review what you know and know what you don't know. And that is a very important aspect. And this is where your mentor comes in, because you can go and say, well, actually, I didn't quite understand this today. Please, can I go to my history or my geography or my design or my art teacher? And the answer will always be yes. And you then have the opportunity to go to that teacher and go and find the information that you need. And then the final thing before I'm going to ask people to start typing in some questions into the comments bar is the fact that you have access to the teachers after hours. So we know, because you are taking this very seriously, and we know that you've gone through the anxiety of this previous year, you will now definitely be spending much more time trying to figure out where you have not been doing so well and where you have to improve in. And it is very easy, and as easy as a WhatsApp message to the group, to your teacher, and your teacher will respond to you after hours to make sure that you know how to be best prepared, not just for the next day, but also for the SBAs that are coming, the tests that are coming, and where to find additional resources that you may need for the revision. So, just before we start taking questions, I just want to emphasize again that the journey of education is not a singular one. It is not one that has specific mileposts that must be reached within a specific time, in a specific way, and that is what makes Abbotts different. That is what makes us a non-traditional school that actually is there to empower you as the young person, the young adult, to achieve what you want to achieve, because you don't have to settle for second best. But it is also important because it helps your parents understand that the past 12 years of education and dedication that has gone into this isn't something that has had an abrupt end. Now, I'm going to give you a minute or two to get your questions ready while I go to the forum where I can see what the questions are. Let's see if there are any questions at this point in time. It doesn't seem like it yet. So one of the questions that I have had during discussions so far is, why don't I just go and maybe do a certificate somewhere? And the reason I say that that specific option isn't always the best option is because of what I just said earlier. There's no reason why you should settle for second best, that you should now follow plan B or plan C because there was a disruption in our society and the disruption the way that we did things. So why redo the year? Well, because you deserve it. Because you deserve the opportunity to prove not only to those around you, but to yourself that actually you can achieve those goals and those hopes and dreams that you have set out. At this point, we're still waiting for some extra questions. I don't know if my production team has any questions that they would like to suggest. I think one of the other questions that I quite often get is, so what happens at the end of that year? So do we write the normal exams? Do I have to go and write prelims again? Do I have to go into the final exam? And the answer is yes. Now, why this is positive, because I can see a lot of teenage eyes rolling in their heads right now. Why this is positive is because you have now already been through it. You know exactly what to expect. You know what it feels like. You know the type of preparation that needs to take place to get there. But more importantly, you now know what mistakes you made previously. And as just about everybody will tell you, it is the times that we have fallen down and that we've made mistakes and we've kind of embarrassed ourselves that we remember. And that is very, very true in the way that when we approach learning as well. We must not be afraid of making mistakes. We must not be afraid of failing at some point, because through that we learn how to fix the errors that we have made. So one of the questions that came through is, can a student that wrote the IEB in a previous year come to Abbotts and enroll at Abbotts? And the answer is yes, you can. However, you will not for this year be writing the IEB assessment board. You will be writing the Department of Basic Education exam. Now, lots of people say, yes, but IEB assessments are more difficult or more easy. There's this misconception out there that IEB is a curriculum, and I want to make that very clear to everybody out there right now. IEB is not a curriculum. It's not a different set of things that you have to study. You are studying exactly the same things that somebody would have studied that wrote the Department of Basic Education. It is just a different exam board. In other words, the cover on the exam front page looks different. That is probably the biggest difference that there is. Some people might even say that the Department of Basic Education is a little bit more easy. I'm not going to go into that debate because I do think that the standards are pretty high for both assessment boards, and I am very secure in the way that the quality is taking place in that. So we are very secure that those of you who did write IEB previously will be able to do a Department of Basic Education quite well right now. Let me just see. I've got another question here. So Sean, you asked us what is the pass rate at the Abbotts colleges, and for this year the pass rate was in line with the whole national pass rate. So we dropped with just under 2%, whereas when I did the analysis of the data just the past week, we see that through all of our Abbotts campuses, so that is in Pretoria East, at Silver Lakes, in Centurion, and Johannesburg South, in Northcliffe, and down in Cape Town and Claremont, it is not a strange thing to see a 100% pass rate. So we see that we had in some of the schools maybe one student fail in 2019, and then we saw that there was the normal rate of decline, which was in line with everybody else, including the IEB during the past year. Probably as soon as possible. Now, the reason I say that, let me give the question first. I'm so sorry, guys. So the question is, by when should we enroll as new grade 12s at Abbotts? And the answer is as soon as possible. The reason for that is so that you can get into the class and get going. Because it is very important that there will be some catch-up that you have to do because you've missed a few weeks. But what is more important is that you develop the right mindset, the right attitude, and then start engaging with your mentor. Because the first thing that you are going to do is you are going to meet your mentor, and you will have the following question: what is your goal? And how are we going to get there? And I want you to listen specifically to the word we, because it is a journey that you and your mentor and your teachers are taking together. It is also important to know that you don't have to just enroll the subjects, and I did mention this in the beginning, that you already have done. You do have the opportunity to decide and say, well, a specific subject didn't go so well at that specific point in time, so I can maybe decide to take tourism in its place, or I have always wanted to take something like hospitality, and I see at this specific Abbotts campus there is hospitality, so that is possible and can be done. So it seems that there are no other questions, and therefore I want to thank you all for joining. If you have questions after watching the repeat of this, please add it in there. and we will try and answer those questions as soon as possible. But my advice to you is, don't settle for less. Do things differently. You have not got there yet, and I hope to see you very soon at an Abbotts near you. Have a good evening.